I've also got quite a lot of number of new faces, which was just about what this evening was about. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sarah Bridges. I work for the County Council and I'm the Programme Director, I think they call me, for the Chester Farm project, which basically means I've got responsibility for delivering the County Council's project around this site, which is something which is very, very exciting and very, very scary. So in equal measure. But part of what motivates me in terms of delivering this project is getting people like your good selves involved with the project and understanding what we're trying to achieve and supporting us. And the point of this evening was particularly for those people who've been helping us with the excavations on site, to have a chance to bring along friends and family, show off what you've been doing, and sort of say, just sort of spread the word about what we're trying to do. Now, how many of you have been on site or never been on site before? There are a few of you. That's fabulous. So for those of you who are sort of completely new, what we'll do, I think, this evening is do the walk along the drift, talking a bit about the site and the context. Now, some of you know this already, but each time we tell the story is different, because Ian and I don't work from a script, so it's going to be completely different, and we'll just wave our arms around and answer any questions that you have. And some of you, I think, have done digging, but haven't necessarily seen all of the site. You've perhaps come down and done some digging for us, and then I say not necessarily been quite aware of the wider site. So we'll try and give you a little bit of background context, say walk across the site to the area of the buildings, and then we'll show you the excavation work that we've been doing over the past sort of week and a half. It's a total of 2 weeks of work. In terms of the County Council's project, we own this 84-acre site. Our mission is to open it up as a site for heritage, education, learning, enjoyment. We want people to be able to come to this wonderful space, find out about Northamptonshire's heritage, and get involved and engaged with it. And that's why I think it's a really, really important project, and why I'm so pleased to see so many of you here this evening. So the rain stopping did help, didn't it? It really was a bit ghastly this morning. So we've got this wonderful project to open up the site, and we're doing that over a period now, a total of 5 years. And we've got the area of the green space, which we've just opened up for some walks, and we're just at the point where we're about to start construction of the 20 farm buildings that are on the site. So many of you who are local will know that the site was owned by Whitworths, just down the road, the mill's down the road, and it was operated as a commercial farm for many, many years. By the time the County Council bought it in 2004, it's no longer commercially viable as a farm. So Whitworths said they've been trying to run it, but we've got 20 buildings which were used as farm buildings without a good use, and they've fallen into some disrepair. And the bit of the project that I've been involved with, particularly over the past year or so, is getting the designs ready for those buildings, and I say bringing those into good use. And what's the first thing we're going to put on site when we open the buildings? Cafe, yes, absolutely. Tea and cake is my top priority. And then loos come sort of fairly second. I don't know, maybe they should come first. I don't know. It's really borderline. So loos, tea and cake go together, don't they? So we're going to open up the site, have facilities for children. I'm not allowed to call them children now. Am I allowed to call you children? Students. I'm allowed to call you students. Coming out, finding out about the site. We'll have facilities for all sorts of education activities and events happening. Have opportunities for volunteering across those different buildings. So, so we'll talk a little bit more about that, as when we get to the site. But this is the County Council's most ambitious heritage project ever. That's why I said I was very excited by it, but also very scared by it. It's over £12 million that we're investing in this site. We've got external funding from the Heritage Lottery Fund, but it's, as I say, substantial capital investment that we're doing. So, any sort of immediate questions about the project or what we're going to do this evening? Where's Ian? Well, this is what I'm just thinking. So Ian Meadows, who's meant to just be shutting the gate at 22, so he'll be with us in a minute, who's the County Council Specialist Archaeological Advisor. So he's the person with the most knowledge about the archaeology on this site. I'm just sort of a programme director, I'm not quite sure what that means. More importantly, also we've got Rachel Bignell, many of you will know, who's our volunteers coordinator, and she's making sure that there's plenty of opportunity for people to get engaged with this project. So that might be helping with the landscape, and I know we've got people who've been doing clearing trees and undergrowth and putting down paths. We've got people who've been helping with fines, washing, processing, people who've been helping with digging, and we're looking at a whole lot of other projects starting in the autumn as well. So it's a very, very exciting project to be part of. So, we've got one last late arrival, so that's good. How are your feet? How's the footwear? We've got reasonably. It's all lumpy bumpy, so don't fall out of your flip-flops. Okay? Don't run too fast. If you fall over and bonk yourself, then it's at your own risk. I'd like to say that. Is that alright? Yeah, okay. So we're all going to be sensible. And we've got a whole other family, which is fabulous. Okay, and here comes Ian. Hello, welcome. Now, we've got quite a lot of you, which is great. So we'll probably just manage you in one group. If anyone can't hear, tell us to shout louder. We're quite good at shouting between us, but we've both got sore throats from doing quite a lot of shouting in the past few days, so not at volunteers, I hasten to add. I don't think we shouted at you, have we? No, I don't think so. But generally shouting, doing tours and sort of guided walks and so on. So, hello, welcome. I'm Sarah, just giving a sort of general introduction to this site. I can't remember whether you've been on sites before.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay. That's
Children
fine.
haven't, but we have.
Okay. No. Well, welcome. It's nice to see you. So we're going to start the tour. In terms of the history and heritage, all the area we're going to walk across until we get to the buildings is scheduled, so it is nationally important. So you should be proud of this. This is a really, really important site for Northamptonshire because it's nationally important, regionally important, as well as being important locally. So remember that. That's really important, and we all treat this site as well. So we've done the general introduction. And I don't know what else I've done. Anyway, I've said a bit about the project. Ian's going to lead off in terms of the archaeology, and we're going to make sure that everyone sort of understands what the site is.
Interrupt, ask questions, don't be afraid. I've locked the gate at the top. Is anybody expecting anybody else? No?
They'll have to lock the gate.
Yeah, I mean, I've locked the gate basically so we don't get travellers or whatever pitching camp up here. Right, let me start with where we are. The nature of this site is such that it runs through under the Claudius Way car park and runs just a little bit further, but it's been buried. When planning permission was given for those tasteful white boxes over there, modelled on a shoebox that's been whitewashed, they decided they'd build the road coming down, put a layer of textile over the archaeology and bury it, on the basis that it wouldn't get destroyed. So we know there's stuff going out there, but we haven't had a chance to dig it. When the big white sheds were built, archaeological recording was carried out, and the remains of one Iron Age farm and also some Roman activity, including a well, were explored, and also something quite interesting for this area, one Anglo-Saxon house, a Gruben house, sunken feature building. So there was one over there. That's all been destroyed and is now written up, and it's a grey literature report. The nature of a lot of archaeology, it forms grey reports that just live on shelves. The area from the gate coming through, however, as Sarah said, is part of the land that the County Council owns, and it's part of an enormous landscape of great archaeological and historical importance. If we start at this point, if you look behind you, you'll see there is a valley. Ignore the bank of the road. But ground slopes down from the left to the bit in front of us, which is the lowest, and before the road embankment was built, it did slope back up slightly to the right. It forms a bit of a dry valley. Now the problem with that is every time it rained, the water would collect and come rushing down. And one thing that our Romano British ancestors decided quite early on was this was a bad place to build a house. So Romano British occupation with houses come all the way down this higher slope, to around where the cars are there, and then there's a break, and then they pick up again where the ground starts to rise over there. So when it floods, when it rains, it just comes rushing straight through. All right? And this is one of the things that we often forget. When history is taught at school, we're taught about the Romans as though they're all from Italy, speak a different language, wear leather miniskirts and eat pasta. Most of the Romano-British people came from Britain. They were Iron Age farmers who became Romanised. They learnt Latin as their language. They adopted Roman customs, Roman clothing, Roman food and things like that. So these people, although it's a Roman town, don't think of them as some remote foreigner. Now, just before we walk off, the area we're standing on and the access road behind us was subject to archaeological work. And one of the things that was found was a number of burials. So tonight, when you get back in your car, if you feel a hand tugging you back down, don't worry. There's a number of late Roman burials there. And one of the reasons for them being there is possibly that when the town became walled, this suburb seems to become very, very marginal. And it's possible that the buildings and things that were here in this slightly wet, dodgy place to be, all got abandoned. It just started to be used for burial. It would be nice to dig bigger areas, but that will be next year possibly. Or the year after.
Now Ian's a Romanist, so just to say, we always have this debate, you see. So for me, the unique bit about this site is the 10,000 years of history on it. So we are going to tell you about that, and we're going to make sure Ian tells us some Roman stories. But don't forget that in this particular context, the special thing about this site is that we have evidence of all the different periods of history over 10,000 years on this one site.
Despite what the banner says.
Despite what, yes, okay, well there's a typo on the banner, so you get a gold star if you spotted a typo on the banner. So 10,000 years of history with a special emphasis on the Romans. So let's move on.
Okay.
Do an archaeological course, and that guy was
I've had another number of different friends that I've been digging with, but that told you about. Well, there was Ria, she's not here. Then there was Debbie, and there was Mike. Spent quite a lot of time with Mike. Tom's not about either. But some people just did different days. And there was a lady who came for one day, and on her way back on the bike, she came down here, and a snake went from there straight across there, really, really fast. And we think it might have been an adder, which is quite a poisonous snake. Okay, or do you want to go on my shoulders? Okay. Ready? Hold this. I'll tell you what, you hold on to that. Keep it forward. Set. Ready?
Was it shiny? Was it dull?
I know what this is. I went with Mum and Dad to the...
Mind the nettles.
Around this bit here.
I don't really mind.
Filming.
The butterflies love the nettles, so we can't get rid of all of them. It would be punishment for our volunteers to ask you to hand pull the nettles, wouldn't it? Anyone going to volunteer? No. Oh, right, there's some volunteers. Blimey.
The reason for stopping here is just, first of all, to explain that the trees through there sit on the west line of the western defences of the Roman town. So there is an earthwork in there, a slight bank, which is what is left of the defences, and the northern defences run along the bank we're going to walk. So this is two sides of the Roman town, the walled town. So imagine not just hawthorn and some sort of conifer, is it a spruce? I don't know. But anyway, some sort of tree. It's green and big. Imagine a stone wall that could be, say, 14, 15 foot high. And it doesn't have to be plain. Any of you been to Le Mans? Roman Le Mans has this wonderful town wall around it that's a mixture of different coloured stones with chevrons and diamonds and all sorts of shapes and patterns on it. But the aim would be to have something large and impressive. Now, this town gets a wall around it sometime in the late 2nd century. A number of towns in Britain get town walls at that stage. We're not sure why they get walls around. It might be because there was a perceived threat. They may have felt vulnerable, but the rest of Europe don't seem to be building walls around towns at the same time. It could be there's a sense of civic pride. One thing we know about Britain is that the Romano-British seem to aspire to be more Roman than the Romans. I did Latin for 5 years at school, and for me it's one of those things I can still remember about 2 lines. But within about 10 years of the conquest, you find graffiti in Latin scratched onto pots. So obviously the British were a case of, Latin, they must have really wanted you to learn it. Whereas us can remember, O lux Dardanii space vidissimar Chucrum, and that's it. O light of the Dardanelles, surest hope of the Trojans, before any of you start referring to dictionaries. But imagine the town wall there, One of the features of this town, though, is that as a town, it doesn't have a gate on the north side. The reason it doesn't have a gate on the north side is the town is positioned at such a location where there is a steep scarp going down onto the river valley. And even the Romano-British weren't so daft as to have a gate that opened so you fell out. So this town has no north gate, has an east and a west gate, and I don't believe it has a south gate either. So anyway, if we progress
It wasn't because of the dual carriageway.
No. I'm sure the Romans would put a roundabout if they needed it. But if we go up to that next post and stop about there, that'd be grand.
You can see it, can't you?
For those of you who are wildlife enthusiasts, I'm sure you're aware that we've got a triple SI on the far side of the River Nen over there. So it's very important in terms of overwintering birds. So there's plenty of scope here for coming and watching the birds, as well as the bees, and at the moment the damselflies and dragonflies are absolutely amazing. What we can see over there, the blue is actually the gravel pit as opposed to the river.
How far that way does
The site extends as far as the line of trees and the traffic, not lights, what do you call them?
street lights?
Street lights, yes.
So that rank of trees going that way was the wall on that side.
We were pretty much, yes, we were on the north wall.
And then where did it go as far as the street lights?
Yeah.
Right, the reason for stopping here is really in front of you, you've got the walled town. We're standing where the north wall is. To the right, you've got the west wall. The line of elderberries over there is approximately the line of the east wall. And you can see the A45 in the distance, that's the south end. All right? So this big rectangle in front of us is the walled area of the town. Now I want to paint a picture. This town would be occupied by shopkeepers, traders. There were temples in it. There's a couple of temples down in this corner. There's a couple of temples over towards that house there. There would have been a number of roads. Now when you did your history at school, what did they always tell you about Roman roads?
Right.
These are the Roman roads at Irchester. Notice they're slightly curly. Do you think they were drunk? Could be. Or built by whoever they kept. The reason they're curved, we think, and archaeology, those of you who watch Time Team, archaeology is full of uncertainties. We don't know anything for certain. It's all perhaps possibly a maybe. The reason we think these roads are curved is the high ground is up there. And if you had a grid of roads going across the slope, the water would just puddle and collect in them. And as a result, you get mosquitoes and smells and whatever. But by having the roads curving down, any of the roadside ditches, the drains, would carry surface water away and it would drain away. And bear in mind, these drains wouldn't just be carrying rainwater away, it might be anything else the householder had tipped into it. So it could be fragrant. All right, so curly roads like that make perfectly good sense. Now, at the end of the tree belt there, just beyond it, there is one of the Iron Age farms. So we have one Iron Age farm with big white sheds, one Iron Age farm at the end of that line of trees, and there's another Iron Age farm a bit beyond the present farmhouse, beyond Chester Farm itself, up next to the A45. And in the Iron Age, this landscape would have been like that, with a little farm there, a little farm there, a little farm there, a family unit. Probably parents, children, maybe grandparents if they hadn't all fallen out. Farming a block of land, growing peas, beans, wheat, cattle, And because of the way they're spread along the top of the slope, what's quite possible is they were utilising some of the high land beyond, where we've now got the trees, the valley side, and also the floodplain beyond. So they were farming on a mixed basis. All right. Now this house would have had timber round houses, thatched roofs, you know, and just imagine that. Now, the Iron Age is a period when you don't get towns. So you can imagine the shock of the locals when the Romans rock up. Got it. That's not my first fly of the day. Now the Romans came, and what they came and found was a landscape full of farms, but with communication links. We're always told the Romans invented straight roads. Well, a straight route is the quickest way between 2 points for everybody, Iron Age, Roman or prehistoric. And what we found is a lot of places the Romans reused prehistoric routeways. I worked for a long time in the quarries in Grendon and Wollaston, and there we had miles of Iron Age droveway that was straight, that the Romans adopted and put a road on top of. So it just went through the same route being used. When they came here, what they found was a route that comes down past those houses up there and down the slope, and we'll go to it in a minute, and down to the river. And it was a major route you could use all year round. So the Romans, having just conquered this country, what they seem to have done is just over by the trees there, built a fort. And we have, just lurking in the geophysics, a very faint outline of a playing card corner. Just those two little bits there that we think is the remains of a fort. See the lines down there and across. Now, in terms of forts, this county doesn't have lots of Roman forts. It's likely the tribes here were quite happy. They thought the Romans were a good idea. And the reason for that is after Julius Caesar's expeditions nearly 100 years previously, a lot of the middle class and upper class families sent their children to be brought up in Romanised households in Europe. So when the Claudian invasion took place, they already were thinking, yeah, Roman ideas are good. Wine drinking, Latin, civilization, bring it on. So some tribes welcomed them in. Some tribes, such as the tribes in Dorset, didn't. So you find some areas where there are no forts and other areas where there's lots of forts and evidence of fighting. Just to sort of reinforce that little point, if you go down to Chichester, have you been to Fishbourne Palace, any of you? Well, Fishbourne Palace is the best bribe in the country. It's the first Roman villa, but it was a bribe to a man who obviously was a local chief, but he helped and facilitated the Roman army through that area. And a sign of how he wanted to be more Roman than the Romans, he looked at the Romans, and the Romans had what's called the trinomen, 3 names. Now his name was very, very Iron Age, but to give himself 3 names, he adopted the emperor's first 2 Christian names, Tiberius, Claudius, and he just bolted them on in front of his own name, Cogidubnus. It meant he had 3 names. One might not have been very Roman, but he had 3, so fitted in. And we have this inscription to Tiberius Claudius Cogidubnus, where he dedicated a temple. So these people in this area are probably quite welcoming to the Romans. So we have a fort over there. Now the impact of having a fort is quite simple. You have young men with something else that wasn't in general use before the conquest.